what we're dealing with are folks who are not really happy with how America is changing, how folks who are not white now get to actually have a voice in all of this. Now, if you watch Fox News, you know Tucker Carlson is the leading white nationalist over at Fox News. And if you don't believe me, here's an interview that he did with a professor who was at the law school, a major Ivy League law school, who herself, she might as well just go ahead and just keep her Klan robe on. This is a conversation with the highest rated host in cable news on the highest rated network in cable news. This actually happened, y'all, this week.
How is that different from vandalism? It just seems like people coming in and wrecking everything that was valuable in an institution that they never built themselves.
It's very reckless and destructive. It's very vindictive. It's very angry.
Yeah. Where does that anger come from, do you think?
I think there is just a tremendous amount of resentment and shame of non-Western peoples against Western peoples for Western peoples' outsized achievements and contributions. I mean, it's really unbearable. I was actually, leaving aside American blacks, who I think do feel that resentment and shame and envy. I mean, it's this unholy brew of sentiments. I was talking to Glenn Lowry about this bizarre fact that Asian and South Asian, Indian doctors at Penn Med, which I know people there and I know what's going on there, that they're on the ramparts for the anti-racism initiative for Dump on America. America is an evil racist place. These are immigrants.
The number one highest income group in America is
hate America.
Right.
A goodly number of them,
but
not
you're
all.
from a group, I mean, first of all, I hate even thinking in terms of groups anyway, because what matters is the individual, obviously. But as long as we are, if you're a member of the highest income, highest achievement group in America, and you're looking down another group, native-born whites, for example, and saying you're the problem, like, how does that work exactly?
Well, that is, to me, utterly bizarre and fascinating. And
why does anybody put up with that?
Right. I'm not saying all Indian immigrants are this way. I'm just saying you look at the roster of, who's leading the programs, the endless number of programs where they talk about diversity and racism and all the racism that people have to encounter in medicine and how racist medicine is and all this. And you see these brown faces or you see these Asian faces and you think, I mean, literally, you think, so you're coming from your country, which you're implying is equal or better than our country.
Literally.
And you're telling us how awful we are. Well, what's the explanation for that?
China's an ethno-state, by the way, which no one ever says. It's about the Han Chinese, and if you're not, that's the problem with the Uyghurs. That's their religion. They're not Han Chinese. Whatever. I'm not even judging. I'm just saying people from there have no right to judge the United States.
But they very much feel that they do. And so
people from there have no right to judge the United States. And that woman is Penn law professor Amy Wax. She's absolutely a white nationalist. We know the Christian church has been very much supportive. Some call it slaveholder religion when you talk about racism in America. Well, my next guest, over the last 40 days of Lent, Good Friday, of course, is this Friday, Easter Sunday, or Resurrection Sunday, they have been fasting from whiteness. Let's hear from him to explain that. Joining me right now is the pastor with First United Church of Oak Park in Chicago. Glad to have you on the show, Reverend John Edgerton. So where did this idea of fasting from whiteness, how did this originate?
This actually began with our Sunday school, because this is something that you need to teach people right from the youngest ages. So we have been teaching our Sunday school students a curriculum that is an intentionally anti-racist curriculum that we call Tell Me the Truth About Racism. And This is an age-appropriate way of teaching these things. The youngest ages, my daughter is in the youngest age group, 4 years old. And we tell history, things like the Trail of Tears, things like Jim Crow. We teach history through a spiritual lens as Christians, and we teach these children about how God has created all people and loves all people. And there is what we call the lie, that some people are better than others. And so we have been teaching this to our children, and we have a 6-week series, and Lent has 6 Sundays. And so we decided, hey, why don't we do this 6-week series and make this the whole focus of our entire church program? We're just a local church. We don't have any national notoriety or anything like that. We're just trying to build a program that makes sense. So we have adult education programs built around this theme. We have our worship built around this theme. And I thought, you know what? A way that we can talk about this is fasting from whiteness, because fasting is an ancient Christian practice. It's about trying to clear out space in your spirit for God to enter in, and that we are going to highlight and place at the center of our lives of faith for the period of Lent the contributions to the Christian faith of the global majority of Christians, which are people of color.
See, the thing that is interesting about this, when you just listen to what Amy had to say, what Tucker says, is this whole deal, oh, no, we don't see people as groups. Yes, you do. And then this whole idea of how dare you bring these things up? How dare you mention these things? America's great. America's grand. America is wonderful. But it's as if we literally can't have the conversation about whiteness in America. It's just like if you're there in Chicago, if Mayor Lori Lightfoot met with a group of pastors, they were all black, the headline would be Mayor Lori Lightfoot meets with black pastors. Yet if she met with a group of pastors and they were all white, it would be Mayor Lightfoot meets with pastors.
That's right. That's right. The assumption is that whiteness is the norm, that whiteness is the lens through which everything has to be understood. And that assumption is simply wrong. And the more that white Christians can understand that we are not the center of the Christian faith, that we are not the center of the story of redemption, then the more faithful that we can be to the gospel which was first preached and proclaimed and lived out by dark-skinned women and men living under the oppressive boot of an empire that is following a savior who is a brown-skinned man from the poor parts of town who was executed for standing up for justice. If white Christians don't extricate whiteness from our faith, then we cannot be true to the gospel.
And that right there is, I think, what is important that we must confront and we must deal with, Pastor. And really the thing I dare say that has to be challenged, and this is what Dr. King even wrote about this in Chaos or Community, Where Do We Go From Here? And that is, white folks have got to talk to white folks about what's going on. Jane Elliott talks about this here. Tim Wise talks about this here. When Bill Hybels and Pastor Bill Hybels and Reverend James Meeks, when they actually traded youth choirs and congregations, they said the Christian church has to confront its focus on whiteness and trying to run away from it, trying to act like it doesn't exist, trying to say, oh my God, I didn't do these bad things, so therefore I have nothing to do with this. But if you still are supportive of a system, and yes, a system that still emphasizes and reacts to the power of whiteness, you are still a part of the same problem.
That's right. That's right. I may not personally have built this whole system, but I benefit from it. And so I am in a position where my responsibility as a Christian my ethical responsibility as a Christian is to dismantle those kinds of systems. So it makes me think of the prophet Amos, who looks up and God takes a plumb line and holds it up to the wall. And the plumb line shows something here is not right. Something here is crooked. It needs to be straightened. And that is what the Christian faith ought to be. The Christian church in America, we are supposed to be the conscience here. And white Christians need to hold a plumb line up to the way that our society works and recognize that whiteness, white-centeredness, white fragility, these things are a huge problem with how our country is. And it hurts and it kills. It kills Black and brown people.
The other day, that was a conversation that took place on MSNBC with Joe Scarborough, and I'm trying to find it right now, where Joe Scarborough was talking about how, that whiteness is running amok, or wokeness is running amok on white Democrats, and it's a problem, and that blacks and others are very conservative, and this is causing a big problem. First of all, part of the issue here is how, let's just be honest, how a lot of white folks are using the word woke as a replacement for the N-word or other words, and how now all of a sudden wokeness is becoming a negative. It's now becoming bad. It's becoming horrible, because those are the same folk who don't actually want to deal with the reality of whiteness, so therefore they complain about wokeness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought maybe he'd said whiteness at the beginning and told on himself. So yes, I think it's that this is absolutely a problem. There's so many people who have sent us these messages, these ill-informed and vulgar kinds of messages, and they're using that language of wokeness. We have some people saying, woke churches should be culled from society and other kinds of things. We've received thousands of harassing messages. We've also received amazing support from the church, and the way that this term has become a cudgel that is to be used to silence people, even for raising issues. We're just a local church that put up a little banner on our little lawn that said, we're going to not have whiteness at the center of our church this Lent. And this is the reaction. It's so outsized that we must have touched on a nerve here. And that the use of that word wokeness as a cudgel, it's absolutely a part of how this whole script works right now.
In fact, I just pulled this up, so I'm going to play this here, guys. So Joe Scarborough just recently tweeted this, where President Barack Obama a couple of years ago was talking about political wokeness. And I just want people to understand, again, the game that is being played, and that's also why your church is being attacked. So, folks, listen to this.
This idea of purity and you're never compromised and you're always politically woke and all that stuff, you should get over that quickly. The world is messy. There are ambiguities. Yep. People who do really good stuff have flaws. People who you are fighting may love their kids and, share certain things with you. And I think that one danger I see among young people, particularly on college campuses, Malia and I talk about this. Yara goes to school with my daughter. But I do get a sense sometimes now among certain young people, and this is accelerated by social media, there is this sense sometimes of the way of me making change is to be as judgmental as possible about other people. And that's enough. Like if I tweet or hashtag about how you didn't do something right or used the wrong verb, or then I can sit back and feel pretty good about myself because, man, you see how woke I was? I called you out. Let me get on TV.
So Pastor, I just want to unpack that a little bit. I get the point the president is trying to make there, but I find it problematic. And the reason I find it problematic is because I think politically what happens is, I mean, I hear what he's saying. People, oh, look, we have disagreements and they're people, they've got children and there are other things that we do well. But when I think about John Brown was very clear. Slavery is wrong. I'm not about to compromise on this issue. And the reason I would disagree with President Obama on that one, because I think at some point, you cannot make excuses. You cannot allow yourself to be a participant in someone else's BS without calling them on it. Because, you know, I think about just the other day when Mitch McConnell was being interviewed by the reporter with Axios, and he was asked the question about moral red lines. And Pastor, this is what I find to be interesting. I'm going to play some of this because, in fact, you know what? I was going to play the second. It was about three. It was a little long. The folks at the Lincoln Project put an ad out dealing with this. It's a shorter one where they show you the difference between an individual who says something, but then when it comes to being politically expedient, they don't actually have moral red lines. I think this is a perfect example of what you are having to deal with when you're talking about fasting from whiteness. I want to get your thoughts on this after it's done.
January 6th was a disgrace. Fellow Americans beat and bloodied our own police. They stormed the Senate floor. They tried to hunt down the Speaker of the House. They built a gallows and chanted about murdering the Vice President. They did this because they'd been fed wild falsehoods by the most powerful man on earth. Because he was angry he'd lost an election. Former President Trump's actions preceded the riot for a disgraceful dereliction of duty.
If the president was the party's nominee, would you support him?
The nominee of the party? Absolutely.
Liz Cheney, who has the same view of you as of January 6th, she said she doesn't want Donald Trump anywhere near the White House and she's going to work to not make that happen because she thinks that there are some things more important than party loyalty.
Well, maybe you ought to be talking to Liz Cheney.
I really, it's not a gotcha. I'm just actually trying to understand, like, is there any threshold for you of what someone would do on a moral level?
I say many things I'm sure people don't understand.
Where do you draw your moral red lines?
Pastor, that right there to me is the point. What you're laying out is you're drawing a moral red line. What you're saying is to your congregation, if you call yourself a Christian, this is how we have to behave. We cannot, and I get what President Obama was saying, but we cannot make excuses when it comes to what should be a moral decision. And the reality is racism, white supremacy, and whiteness, that is a moral choice that people are making.
Yes, and I'm glad that you raised, John Brown. I remember that what he stood up in the church and said, I do hereby before God and in the presence of this assembly dedicate my life to the abolition of slavery. And that's how he began his ministry, that work, John Brown. So I don't believe for a minute when people say, well, this person was just of their time and this and that, where in that era, there were people of conscience who knew what was right and who were willing to work to do what was right, to be faithful to the gospel. Because this is, again, he did this in a church before God. That's what John Brown did. And so to me, this absolutely is a question of Christian ethics, of Christian morals, but also if as white Christians, when we put ourselves out of the center, what we find is the unbelievable and beautiful spirit-filled contributions. We have had some of the best church in Lent. We have sung every week a group called Amen Siakudumisa, which is an amazing freedom song by Stephen Cuthbert Molefe, who's South African of Sotho descent. We have been singing Savior God Above, set to Duke Ellington's Come Sunday. Church has been great. That's the thing about morality, is that when you live after God's law, when you follow righteousness as God talks about it, when you serve justice, this is when you find that that great blessings come. So moral, yes, you need to have not only moral red lines, but you should be in the moral middle of the road. Absolutely, that's part of being Christian.
Pastor John Edgerton, we certainly appreciate it. You have been getting phone calls and emails, but I'll say this here: if you're a Christian and nobody's mad at you, you're probably not doing something right.
That's right. And with the devil been kicking my butt as hard as he had this week, I can't wait till Resurrection Sunday.
All right, then. We certainly appreciate you joining us here in Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Thank you.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment. Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?